An appeals court has just upheld the $83 million defamation judgment E. Jean Carroll won against President Trump. Let's go live right now to CNN's Kara Scannell. Kara, the president lost the appeal, so what happens now?
Well, if the president did lose this appeal, and he already set aside money in order to pay E. Jean Carroll, but the litigation here is most likely not over. Donald Trump's lawyers releasing a statement in which they said that they will continue to fight this, and that they said the defense will be taken over by the Department of Justice. This was a civil lawsuit that was brought against President Trump when he was out of office. It went to trial when he was out of office, but now he is saying it should be handled by the Justice Department as this moves forward. Now, the next step here would be a challenge to the U.S. Supreme Court. That is certainly something that the Trump administration can attempt to do, and it would be up to the justices to decide whether to hear this. But you'll remember this was the big judgment against Donald Trump as he was a candidate, brought by E. Jean Carroll, the magazine columnist who said that he had sexually assaulted her in a New York department store in the mid-1990s.
What's up, people? Welcome to Dr. John Podcast. So this happening right now, multiple appeals courts are boxing Trump in from every direction, shutting down his attempts to erase a felony conviction while massive civil judgments loom. The legal walls are closing in fast, not in some distant drama, but right now, this week, with enormous implications for the sitting president and the country. Let me set the stage for you here. Trump is currently the first president in American history to take office as a convicted felon. Let that sink in for a second. A convicted felon sitting in the Oval Office. That happened after he was found guilty on 34 felony counts in New York over the Stormy Daniels hush money scheme. And ever since then, he's been fighting tooth and nail to get that conviction erased. He's been filing appeals.
And she went on trial twice. The first time, a jury found that Trump had sexually abused her and had defamed her when he denied the assault, when he said that she wasn't his type, and when he said that she made up the claim to boost sales of her book. That jury awarded her $5 million. Then they also had a second lawsuit that went to trial that was just focused on the defamation. And it's that decision, that is this $83.3 million verdict, that the jury had awarded Carroll. Now, in this, the judges here pointing out that even though the big chunk of that $65 million was for punitive damages, that means to punish Trump. The judges saying that they were upholding this even though it was very high compared to a ratio of compensatory damages, because it was so extraordinary and unprecedented, because Trump had continued to repeat the statements that a jury had already found to be defamatory within 48 hours after the verdict at a CNN town hall and then during the trial itself. So that is the basis for which this appellate panel is saying that they are upholding this verdict. Next steps will be to see if the Supreme Court is asked to take up the case, and if they do, well...
He's been arguing presidential immunity. He's been trying every legal trick in the book. And for a while, it looked like maybe, just maybe, he might find a way out. But now the courts are speaking. And they're not saying what Trump wants to hear. Judge after judge is looking at his arguments and saying, no, not good enough. Your legal theories are weak. Your appeals are meritless. And you're not escaping this. Now, here's what really blows my mind about this whole situation. Trump keeps going on television and claiming total victory. Every time a case gets tossed or delayed, he acts like he's won. He acts like the whole legal system has vindicated him. But that's not what's actually happening. What's actually happening is that some cases are getting dropped while others are getting locked in.
Breaking news out of New York, where a jury just awarded E. Jean Carroll $83.3 million in her defamation case against former President Trump. You can see a very jubilant E. Jean Carroll there on your screen as she exits the courthouse.
Yeah, a huge smile, more than $83 million. As we take a look at these live pictures, I do want to bring in national correspondent Alex Miller, who is in the courtroom. Alex, what can you tell us? I mean, this is more money than a lot of people were expecting.
This is more money in some ways than they were expecting. When you look down the break, it's $83.3 million total. But when you look at the breakdown, it's $7.3 million for emotional damages. That is within what they had asked for. They'd asked between 7 and 12 million, but in the end, they really wanted that 12 million. 11 million for reputational damages. Again, they wanted around $12 million for that as well. It's what they decided for punitive damages. $65 million for punitive damages. This was the third part of this case. So the first part of the case is that there were two days worth of statements that the former president made that the team said
Some appeals are being revived while others are being rejected. It's a mixed bag. And in the cases that really matter, the ones with actual convictions and massive money judgments, Trump is losing. He's losing badly. And the appeals courts are making it very clear that his chances of escaping are slim to none. So when you hear Trump say he's winning, understand that he's spinning. He's putting on a show because behind the scenes, the legal pressure is only getting worse. This brings me to the big picture here. What we're witnessing is a president who is trying to put himself above the law.
ruined E. Jean Carroll's reputation. The punitive damages are what they said they needed to deter him from continuing to speak about E. Jean Carroll. And this is a huge message from the jury that they thought she should be awarded $65 million. One of the things that her attorneys were saying during the closing arguments were that Donald Trump is a multi-billionaire, and that if you don't award a high number, they didn't believe that any real damage would be done, any real deterrent would be done. So they were asking for a very big number, but undoubtedly $65 million just to deter him is quite a lot.
Yeah, and the total being more than 8 times what Carroll initially asked for in the initial lawsuit. One of the things I also found interesting that the judge's advice to jurors were that they never disclose that they were on that jury, Alex.
Yeah, I mean, there's a huge concern for safety here. The jurors were brought to a separate location during this trial. They all met up at a different place. Then they were brought in unmarked cars and brought in through separate entrances. They had to go just back and forth to the jury room throughout the day. This was not a sequestered jury because they were allowed to go home. But at the same time, every precaution was taken to make sure that their names and faces were never going to be known to the public. They didn't, during jury selection, obviously only referred to them as their numbers, and they tried to make it as
He's arguing that because he's president, he should be immune from prosecution. He should be immune from civil judgments. He should be immune from any legal accountability whatsoever. And the courts, they're not buying it. Even judges who were appointed by Republicans, even courts that are considered conservative, they're looking at Trump's immunity arguments and saying there are limits. You don't get a blank check just because you sit in the White House. That's what makes this story so important, because it's not just about Trump. It's about whether any president from either party can claim to be above the law. The courts are drawing lines right now, and those lines are going to matter for generations. Think about what this means for the future of our country. If Trump can successfully argue that presidents are immune from all legal consequences, what does that mean for the next president and the one after that? It means any president can do whatever they want, break any law, commit any crime, and then just claim immunity. That's not how America is supposed to work. That's not what the founders intended. And the fact that we're even having this debate shows you how far things have gone. Trump has pushed the legal system to its absolute limit. He's testing every boundary, and the courts are finally pushing back. That's the story here. That's what you need to understand. The judges are saying enough is enough. There are limits to presidential power, and you, Donald Trump, are going to be held accountable. This is a defining moment in American legal history, and everybody needs to be paying attention to what happens next. Here's what makes this even more incredible. Trump's legal team has been arguing with a straight face that a president could literally commit crimes and face no consequences as long as they claim it was part of their official duties. Think about how insane that is. They're essentially arguing for a king, not a president, someone who is above the law, someone who can't be touched. And the fact that this argument has made it all the way to the Supreme Court, and that the Supreme Court actually gave presidents some immunity, shows you how close we came to a very different kind of country. But the lower courts, the appeals courts handling these specific cases, they're pushing back. They're saying that immunity has limits, and Trump is running into those limits right now. Let's get into the details here, because there's a lot happening across multiple cases, and if you're not paying close attention, it's easy to get confused. I'm going to walk you through exactly what's going on, case by case, court by court, decision by decision. By the end of this, you're going to understand exactly why Trump is cornered, why his options are running out, and why these appeals court decisions are so devastating for his legal future. Let's start with the big one, the New York hush money conviction. This is the case that made Trump a convicted felon, and it's the case he's been fighting hardest to erase. A New York jury found Trump guilty on 34 felony counts related to the Stormy Daniels hush money scheme. This was huge, historic, the first time a former president had ever been convicted of felony crimes. And when Trump took office, he became the first sitting president in American history to be a convicted felon. Ever since that conviction, Trump has been trying everything to get it thrown out. His main argument, presidential immunity. He's claiming that because he was president or because he is president now, he should be immune from these charges. And he's been pushing to get the case moved from state court to federal court where he thinks he'll have a better shot at winning. Here's where it gets interesting. Just this week, a federal appeals court gave Trump another shot at moving the case to federal court. They ordered a new review of whether the case belongs in federal court instead of state court. Now, Trump is spinning this as a victory. He's acting like he's won. But here's the thing, and this is crucial. The appeals court did not clear him. They did not overturn his conviction. They did not say he's innocent. All they did was say, okay, let's take another look at whether this case should be in federal court. That's it. The conviction still stands. Trump is still a convicted felon, and there's no guarantee that moving the case to federal court, even if that happens, would actually erase the conviction. So when Trump claims victory, understand what's really happening. He got a procedural win, not a substantive one. And here's another twist. The Department of Justice filed a brief saying that Trump's hush money conviction should be thrown out. The DOJ is basically arguing that because of immunity issues and federal law concerns, the conviction is invalid. Now, this sounds like a big deal, right? The federal government saying the conviction should be tossed. But hold on. This is what's called an amicus brief, a friend of the court brief. It's just the DOJ's opinion. The state court judges who actually have power over this case, they don't have to follow it. They can read the DOJ's brief and say, thanks for your thoughts. Now we're going to do whatever we want. And that's probably what's going to happen. The New York judges have shown no interest in bowing to pressure from Washington. So while Trump can point to the DOJ brief as evidence that he's winning, the reality is that the judges who matter haven't changed their minds. Now let's talk about the E. Jean Carroll case, because this one is really bad for Trump. A jury hit Trump with an $83.3 million verdict for defaming the writer E. Jean Carroll. This was a massive judgment, one of the largest defamation verdicts in American history, and Trump has been fighting desperately to overturn it. His argument, you guessed it, presidential immunity. He's claiming that when he made those defamatory statements about Carroll, he was acting in his official capacity as president. Therefore, he should be immune. But a federal appeals court looked at that argument and said, no, rejected. The court refused to throw out the verdict. They said Trump's immunity claims don't hold up, and that $83.3 million judgment is still in place. Trump still owes that money, and his chances of getting out of it just got a lot worse. And it gets even worse for Trump because there's another defamation case. This one against CNN, where Trump just lost again. Trump sued CNN for calling his election fraud claims the big lie. He was furious that a major news network was characterizing his claims that way. So he filed a defamation lawsuit seeking damages. But an appeals court sided with CNN and rejected Trump's lawsuit. The court called his arguments without merit. Without merit, that's legal speak for your case is garbage. You have no legal basis for this. And you're not going to punish a news network just because they called out your election fraud claims. This was a complete and total loss for Trump. And it shows that the courts are not afraid to shut him down when his legal arguments are weak. They're not intimidated by him. They're not bowing to political pressure. They're just looking at the law and making decisions based on the facts. This CNN case is actually really important for understanding where things are headed, because Trump has been threatening to sue media organizations for years. He's been talking about changing libel laws. He's been promising to go after anyone who says things he doesn't like. But when he actually got his day in court, he lost badly. The appeals court looked at his arguments and said they were meritless. That's a strong word for a court to use. It means Trump didn't even have a reasonable argument. He was just throwing stuff at the wall and hoping something would stick, and it didn't. So the next time Trump threatens to sue a media company, remember this case. Remember that when he actually tried it, he got shut down. Now here's what's really important to understand about all of these cases. Trump keeps relying on the same basic argument, presidential immunity. He's pointing to a Supreme Court ruling that said presidents have broad immunity for official acts. and he's trying to stretch that ruling as far as it can possibly go. He's arguing that almost everything he did as president or related to being president should be protected by immunity. But the lower courts, the appeals courts that are actually hearing these cases, they're not buying it. They're interpreting the Supreme Court's immunity ruling narrowly. They're saying, yes, presidents have some immunity, but there are limits, and those limits apply to you. That's the pattern we're seeing over and over again. Trump makes a big immunity claim, the courts say not so fast, and Trump loses. Let me also give you some context on what's been happening with Trump's other legal troubles. Because while some cases are getting locked in, others are actually getting dropped. Just recently, a Georgia judge and new prosecutor dropped the last major 2020 election interference case against Trump. This was the case involving allegations that Trump tried to overturn the Georgia election results, and now it's gone. Dismissed. That's obviously good news for Trump on that front. But here's the thing. The Georgia case being dropped doesn't erase the New York conviction. It doesn't eliminate the E. Jean Carroll judgment. It doesn't fix any of his other legal problems. So Trump can celebrate the Georgia dismissal, and he should. But that doesn't mean his overall legal situation is getting better. If anything, the contrast makes things clear. Some cases are going away, but the ones that stick, the conviction and the massive civil judgments, those are locked in. And Trump can't escape them. You know what really bothers me about all of this? The way Trump spins every single development as a win. Every case that gets dropped, total victory. Every procedural ruling in his favor, complete exoneration. But that's not what's happening. The reality is much more complicated. Some things are going his way, some things aren't. And the things that aren't going his way, those are the big ones. The felony conviction, the tens of millions of dollars he owes. Those are the things that actually matter. And on those fronts, Trump is losing. The courts are boxing him in, his options are running out. And no amount of spin can change that. Let me give you some perspective on why all of this matters. We are watching something unprecedented in American history. A sitting president actively governing the country while also being a convicted felon and owing massive civil judgments. That has never happened before. And the way Trump handles this, the way the courts handle this, is going to set precedents for future presidents. If Trump can successfully claim immunity for everything, that changes what it means to be president. If courts continue to reject his immunity claims, that establishes limits on presidential power. Either way, what happens in these cases is going to echo for generations. This isn't just about Trump, it's about the office of the presidency itself. It's about what kind of accountability we expect from our leaders. And it's about whether the rule of law actually means anything in this country. The founders of this nation specifically designed a system where no one, not even the president, would be above the law. They had just fought a revolution against a king. They didn't want another one. And yet, here we are, centuries later, arguing about whether a president can be held accountable for crimes. Trump is testing the limits of our constitutional system in ways we've never seen before, and the courts are being forced to answer questions that nobody thought they'd have to answer. Can a president really claim immunity for anything and everything? The appeals courts are saying no, and that answer matters. Here's what frustrates me about how this story is being covered. The mainstream media, they're either downplaying Trump's legal troubles or spinning them as political persecution. You've got some outlets acting like every procedural win for Trump is a total victory. And you've got other outlets ignoring the cases he's actually losing. But the truth, as always, is more complicated. Trump is winning some battles and losing others. And the battles he's losing, the conviction and the civil judgments, those are the ones that actually matter. Those are the ones with real consequences. So don't let anyone tell you that Trump has been vindicated. Don't let anyone tell you that all his legal troubles are over, because they're not. The courts are still speaking, and they're not saying what Trump wants to hear. Think about what this means for the future of our country. If Trump can successfully argue that presidents are immune from all legal consequences, what does that mean for the next president and the one after that? It means any president can do whatever they want, break any law, commit any crime, and then just claim immunity. That's not how America is supposed to work. That's not what the founders intended. The fact that we're even having this debate shows you how far things have gone. Trump has pushed the legal system to its absolute limit. He's testing every boundary, and the courts are finally pushing back. The judicial system is performing exactly as it was designed to perform, checking the power of the executive branch and holding even the most powerful person in the country accountable for their actions. And that's exactly what the founders intended. That's exactly what they envisioned when they designed this system of checks and balances. Here's the bottom line. Trump is cornered. His appeals are failing. His immunity arguments are being rejected, and the legal walls are closing in. Yes, he got some procedural wins this week. Yes, the Georgia case got dropped, but the conviction stands, the E. Jean Carroll judgment stands, and the courts are making it clear that there are limits to presidential immunity. Trump wanted to put himself above the law. The courts are saying not so fast. And that's the story. That's what's really happening. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Think about what this means going forward. Trump is going to be campaigning while still being labeled a convicted felon, while still owing tens of millions in civil judgments. His opponents are going to use that against him. Attack ads are going to remind voters every single day, and Trump is going to have to answer for all of it. That's the political reality he's facing, and no amount of legal maneuvering is going to change it. The conviction happened, the judgments happened, and they're going to follow him for the rest of his political career. Every campaign stop, every rally, every speech, the word felon is going to be hanging over his head, and his opponents are going to make sure nobody forgets it. This is also going to be a test for Republican voters. Are they going to stick with a convicted felon? Are they going to rally behind someone who owes tens of millions in defamation judgments? Trump is betting that his supporters don't care about the legal stuff. He's betting that they see all of this as political persecution. And maybe he's right. Maybe Republican voters will look past the conviction and the judgments and support him anyway. But that's a big gamble, and it's going to play out in real time over the next year. We're going to find out whether being a convicted felon actually matters in American politics. And honestly, whatever the answer is going to tell us a lot about where this country is headed. Let me give you one more thing to think about. The legal system has been tested before. Presidents have faced investigations. Presidents have faced impeachment. But no president has ever faced what Trump is facing right now. No president has ever been a convicted felon sitting in the Oval Office. No president has ever owed tens of millions of dollars in civil judgments while serving as commander-in-chief. And no president has ever tried so hard to claim immunity for everything they've ever done. Trump is writing the playbook for presidential accountability in the 21st century. But he's doing it by trying to tear down the very concept of accountability itself. He's arguing that there should be no limits, no consequences, no accountability for the most powerful person in the world. And the courts are saying no. That's the story. That's what's happening right now in real time. Trump is losing control of his legal fate. The walls are closing in, and there's nothing he can do about it. He can spin all he wants. He can claim victory every time something goes his way. But the fundamental reality is that he is a convicted felon, and he owes tens of millions of dollars, and the courts are not giving him a way out. That's the truth. That's what's happening, and you need to understand it. Now, here's what I really want you to take away from all of this. The rule of law actually means something in this country. The courts are not a political tool. The judges are not political operatives. They are doing their jobs, and they are upholding the Constitution, and they are saying that even the President of the United States cannot escape accountability. And that matters. It matters for Trump. It matters for the next president. It matters for the future of our democracy. So don't tune out. Don't let the legal jargon and the procedural complexity overwhelm you. This matters. It matters for the country you live in. It matters for the kind of accountability we expect from our leaders. And it matters for the future of this nation. All right, that's going to do it for today's video. If you found this helpful, if you learned something new, make sure to smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And if you're not subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update, because these legal cases, they're moving fast. New developments are happening every week, and you're going to want to stay on top of it. I'll see you in the next one. This is a president who is fighting for his legal life. He's fighting to erase a conviction that makes him a felon. He's fighting to get out of judgments that cost him tens of millions. And he's fighting to claim immunity that would protect him from any future accountability. But the courts are not giving him what he wants. They're drawing lines. They're setting limits, and they're saying that there are things a president cannot do. Things a president cannot claim and things a president cannot escape. That's the system working. That's the checks and balances that the founders designed. And that's what makes this story so important. It's not just about one man and his legal problems. It's about the system itself and whether it can hold the most powerful person in the country accountable. And the answer so far is yes. The system is holding. The courts are holding. And Trump is being held accountable. The New York conviction is still there. The E. Jean Carroll judgment is still there. The appeals courts are rejecting his immunity arguments, and the legal walls are closing in. Trump is cornered, and there's no escape. That's the story, and it's going to continue to unfold. There are going to be more hearings, more appeals, more decisions. There are going to be new developments and new twists, but the fundamental direction is clear. Trump is losing control of his legal fate. The courts are boxing him in, and the walls are closing in faster and faster with each passing week. So stay tuned, keep watching, keep paying attention, because this story is far from over, and it's going to get even more intense as the walls continue to close in on Donald Trump.